Mr. President, I rise today to speak in support of the immigration reform bill that we're going to vote on soon. I want to bring a Minnesota perspective to the debate. I want to talk about how this bill will help Minnesota businesses and agriculture while also helping and protecting Minnesota workers. I also want to talk about how this bill will help Minnesota families and communities. Mr. President, Minnesota was admitted to the Union in 1858. For the first 30 years after Minnesota was founded, no fewer than 1/3 of Minnesotans were immigrants who were born abroad. Our state didn't suffer from that. It thrived. Our fields were first tilled by Swedish immigrants. Their crops filled 2 million acres. Our iron mines in the north depended on Finnish labor. Norwegians were critical to our logging industry, while the Danes who came to Minnesota after the Civil War made our state a leader in dairy farming. Today, immigrants are about 7% of Minnesota's population. Most of them come from Asia and Latin America and Africa rather than Europe, but the contribution of immigrants to Minnesota's economy and to our communities are no less important. Mr. President, I'm going to vote for this bill because of what it will do for Minnesota's economy. This is clearest when it comes to Minnesota's agricultural industry, particularly our dairy farms. Minnesota is the nation's 6th largest dairy producers. 5% of our nation's cows are in the state of Minnesota. But for years, I've been meeting with dairy farmers, and they've told me that they can't get the workforce that they need. They can't find enough American workers, and the nation's agricultural guest worker program is only open to seasonal workers. Unfortunately, in Minnesota, you can't milk cows seasonally. If you did that, they'd just get cranky, the cows. For years, I've been calling for an immigration bill to fix this problem by opening our guest worker program to dairy farmers, and this bill does just that. This bill won't just help agriculture. A lot of industry in Minnesota is in the high-tech and medical sectors, companies like 3M and Medtronic. Unfortunately, our visa system works against these companies because while the University of Minnesota is minting new PhDs in STEM fields, our system sends many of our top foreign graduates right back to their home countries. Thanks to the work of my fellow Minnesota Senator, Senator Klobuchar, this bill will make it easier for Minnesota companies to recruit and hire top minds, regardless of where they come from. I'm also proud that this bill includes 2 amendments that I wrote that will protect small businesses. A major component of this bill is to create a mandatory electronic employment verification system called E-Verify. But small businesses in Minnesota were initially concerned about how E-Verify would affect them. My first amendment creates a special office within the Department of Homeland Security whose sole job will be to give workers and small businesses quick in-person assistance if E-Verify doesn't work the way it should. My other amendment will keep pressure on DHS to lower E-Verify error rates that in the past have caused major headaches for small businesses and employees alike. Mr. President, while this bill will help our businesses, it also has solid protections for American workers. In negotiations, the AFL-CIO demanded that before an American employer can hire a foreign guest worker, that employer has to aggressively advertise for and recruit American workers. If a business breaks these rules, it can get kicked out of the guest worker program. If the protections in this bill prove insufficient, I'll fight to improve them, but for now, I think protections negotiated by the AFL-CIO are adequate for moving forward. So this bill will protect workers today, but it will also help them for decades down the line by bolstering our nation's safety net. Our changing demographics have put a strain on our Social Security system. More young workers paying into the Social Security system will ease that, and that's precisely what this bill will provide. Census figures show that 48% of immigrants in the U.S. are between the ages of 20 to 44. For native-born workers, that figure is about 31%. Finally, this bill will help our economy by helping our nation's bottom line. According to the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, immigration reform will decrease our deficit by $175 billion over the next decade and an additional $700 billion over the following decade. That's $875 billion, close to $1 trillion in deficit reduction. Mr. President, this bill will be a boon to Minnesota's economy and to our nation's economy as well. But this bill isn't just about economics, it's also about our values. It's about living up to the promise engraved on the base of the Statue of Liberty. Give me your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free. Send these, the homeless, the tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Minnesota has a special part of that, in that promise, has played a special part. For decades, Minnesota has welcomed more refugees and asylees than almost any other state. We've welcomed the Hmong and Somalis and so many others because it's the right thing to do. In the same way, a big part of this bill is about doing the right thing and helping the least of our brothers and sisters. Last October, I went down to Northfield, Minnesota, where I visited a program for Latino high school students called the Torch Program that stands for Tackling Obstacles and Raising College Hopes. This is an amazing program that's more than doubled the high school graduation rate for Latino students. During my visit, I met with many undocumented students who were brought here by their parents as young children who were thus undocumented through no fault of their own. For years, these kids have watched their classmates apply to college and plan for careers, but they knew maybe that wasn't for them because they couldn't work legally or serve in the military. Then last June, the president took executive action to protect these kids from deportations and to let them work legally. Their teachers told me what an enormous difference it made for these kids. For the first time, they could see that they had a future. They could go to college or join the military. And that was just because of an executive order that didn't have the force of a statute. With this bill, thanks to the inclusion of Senator Durbin's DREAM Act, their hope for the future will be a certainty. Good for those kids. And you know what? Good for us, because those kids are going to work wonders. Mr. President, I'm especially proud of a bill I wrote that also helps children and that is included in the larger bill we're debating, and that's the Help Separated Children Act. My bill was inspired by what happened in Worthington, Minnesota, in sort of the southwest corner of our state in 2006, when Immigration and Customs Enforcement carried out enforcement actions in 6 states and arrested hundreds of unauthorized immigrants. Tragically, those raids also left many children, most of them citizens, without their parents and with no way to find them. One second grader in Worthington came home from school to find his 2-year-old brother alone and his parents gone. For the next week, he cared for his brother while his grandmother drove from Texas to meet them. Over the past 2 years, more than 200,000 parents of citizen children were deported. These children are often abandoned at home or at school and can go for months without speaking or visiting their parents. My Help Separated Children Act will lay down basic humanitarian protections for children in immigration enforcement. It will make sure that parents and children can stay in contact, and will make sure that parents can participate in court proceedings relating to their children. My bill was co-sponsored by Senators Grassley, Coons, Cornyn, Hirono, Cruz, Feinstein, Leahy, and Blumenthal. Of the 200 or so amendments that we debated in the Judiciary Committee, This was the only one that passed on a unanimous 18-0 vote. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to continue my remarks for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Thank you. I'm also proud the bill includes amendments I passed to help victims of domestic violence as well as young children who are themselves involved in immigration proceedings. Mr. President, we have a rare opportunity before us. We have a chance to vote on a bipartisan bill written by a bipartisan group and supported by both the AFL-CIO and the Chamber of Commerce. This bill will help our economy, secure our border, and give millions of undocumented people a tough but fair path to get right with the law. And on top of this, this bill will save the American people hundreds of billions of dollars. I am proud to support this bill, and I urge my colleagues to do the same. Before I close, Mr. President, I want to take a moment to congratulate the members of the Gang of Eight, Senators Schumer, McCain, Durbin, Graham, Menendez, Rubio, Bennett, and Flake. This is an example of the Senate at its best. It speaks not just to the ability of the senators in the gang, but also to their courage. I'd also like to recognize Chairman Leahy for managing this markup and this debate so expertly. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.